It was a cold evening. The kind where people wrapped themselves in thick coats and rushed inside warm places. One small family-style diner, tucked away on a quiet street, was glowing with soft yellow lights. Inside, the smell of fries and grilled sandwiches filled the air. It was peaceful. Nothing seemed out of place. A man sat near the window with his little daughter, maybe 6 or 7 years old. She had curly hair and a wide smile. He was a quiet man, not too young, not too old, just someone who looked like he'd been through a lot, but still had love in his eyes for his daughter. They shared jokes over a plate of fries. It was their after-school tradition. Every Friday, without fail. That's when he noticed her, a waitress, maybe in her early 20s, walked by with 2 plates balanced in her hands. She didn't smile like the others. Her face looked calm, but her eyes kept drifting toward the exit door. Again and again. Like she was counting the minutes until she could leave. Like someone might walk in at any moment and change everything. The man didn't think much of it at first. Maybe she was just tired. Maybe she was waiting for her shift to end. But the next time she passed their table, her hands were shaking. A little. Not from cold, but from something else. Fear, maybe? He didn't know. She accidentally dropped a spoon, quickly bent down to pick it up, and whispered, "Sorry," under her breath. Even though no one had said anything, his daughter asked, "Daddy, is she okay?" He looked at her and smiled softly. Maybe she's just having a tough day. But deep down he wasn't so sure. They finished their food. Before leaving, the man left a generous tip and a kind smile. The girl nodded slightly, her lips pressing into something close to a smile, but her eyes still watched the door. The next week they came again. Same spot, same table, and she was there again. Only this time, there was a small bruise on her wrist. It was hidden under her sleeve. But he caught a glimpse of it when she reached over to place a glass on their table. She quickly pulled her sleeve back down. Her expression didn't change, but he saw the way her eyes darted toward the door again, not again and again. Like she was waiting for someone, or afraid someone might walk in. She never said much. Just, "Can I take your order?" Or, "Do you want catch up with that?" Her voice was soft, polite, but the words felt like they were coming from someone who was careful. Like she didn't want to upset anyone. Like she had learned to keep her head down. That night when they were leaving, the man saw something that made his heart feel heavy. A car waited just outside. A dark-colored one. An older man sat in the driver's seat. He didn't come inside. He just kept honking the horn every few seconds. Loud, impatient. The girl rushed to the back, grabbed her coat, and ran out the front door toward the car. She didn't look happy to see him. She didn't smile. She just opened the door and got in quickly, almost like she was afraid to make him wait. The man stood still for a second. He didn't know who that was. Maybe her father, maybe her boyfriend. But whoever it was, she didn't look safe. She didn't look free. All night he thought about it. He remembered things from his past. He had once been in a relationship where voices were always raised, where walking on eggshells became normal, where he had to make the painful choice to walk away, not just for himself, but for his daughter. He had promised himself that if he ever saw someone going through something like that, he would not stay silent. So the next week, he came back again. She looked even more tired this time. Her smile was gone completely. But she was still doing her job, still bringing plates to tables, still keeping her head down. When she came to their table, he spoke softly. "If you ever need help, just know someone's willing to listen." She froze. She didn't say a word, didn't nod, didn't cry. Just looked at him for a second longer than usual. Then walked away. But when they got up to leave and he picked up the bill folder to pay, he found something inside. A napkin. Folded in half. He opened it slowly. Inside, in tiny shaky handwriting, were just a few words. He waits outside every day. I'm scared. I don't know what to do. He felt like the air had been punched out of his lungs. This wasn't just something he had imagined. She really was in trouble. And now? She had trusted him. He looked toward the counter. She was gone, probably in the back kitchen. He folded the napkin, placed it in his coat pocket, and held his daughter's hand a little tighter. That night, he didn't sleep much. But one thing was clear. He couldn't walk away from this. Not when someone was silently asking for help. That night. Sleep didn't come easily to him. He kept thinking about the girl, the quiet waitress whose eyes were always on the exit, and whose napkin held a silent cry for help. The way she moved, the way she spoke, the way she flinched slightly when someone raised their voice, it all made sense now. She wasn't just afraid. She was trapped. The man sat at the edge of his bed, watching his daughter sleep peacefully. He gently brushed a strand of hair from her face and whispered, "No one should have to live in fear." He remembered the years before his divorce. The shouting, the slammed doors, the fear of saying the wrong thing. But he had made it out. And now, he had a responsibility, not just to protect his own child, but maybe to be the hand someone else needed. The next evening, he returned to the diner. He didn't even wait until Friday. He COULDN single quotes T. When he walked in, she wasn't on the floor. He looked around slowly, scanning the room. Another waitress walked by, and he politely asked, "Is she here today?" "The girl with the ponytail who usually serves this section?" The waitress gave a small nod. "She's in the back, doing dishes today. Not feeling too well." That answer worried him even more. He sat down and waited. After 20 minutes, she came out, drying her hands with a towel. She was thinner than he remembered. Her eyes were red, like she hadn't slept. She froze when she saw him, and for a moment, he thought maybe she was scared of him too. But then she came closer. Slowly, "I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't mean to write that. I didn't know who to talk to." He looked at her gently. "You don't have to say sorry. I just want to make sure you're okay." She hesitated. "I'm not." Those two words hung in the air like heavy bricks. She looked down. "I don't have anyone. No family here. I moved in with him a year ago, and since then, I'm not allowed to go anywhere without him knowing. I can't use my phone alone. I don't even have a key to the apartment. I work here, and he waits outside every single shift. If I take too long, he gets angry. If I talk to anyone for too long, he asks questions all night. He's never hit me in public, but at home." Her voice cracked. The man didn't ask more. He didn't need to. Instead, he said calmly, "There's a way out. I know a safe place where women go when they're trying to get away from situations like this. You'll be safe there. They'll help you start over." She looked scared again, like she wanted to believe him but couldn't. "What if he finds me? What if he follows me?" "You won't be alone," he said. "I'll help you, but you have to be ready, really ready. Because once you leave, you can't go back." She nodded slowly, like a small child holding back tears. "I want to leave," she whispered. "I just don't know how." That night, they made a plan. Nothing fancy, nothing risky. Just a quiet, careful plan. On Friday, at the end of her shift, she would go to the kitchen like usual. But instead of leaving through the front door where the man always waited, she'd slip out the back. The single dad would be parked behind the diner, near the alley, just a few steps away. He would drive her to the shelter himself. "I know someone there," he said. "A woman who helps others like you. It's a safe house. No one will tell him where you are." She didn't say anything more. She just looked at him with wide, scared eyes and hope. Real hope. But plans don't always go smoothly. The next day, he went to visit the shelter, explained the situation, and made sure they had her room ready. They promised to help her get counseling, legal advice, even work if she needed it later. It was all in place. By Friday, the man was nervous. All day at work, he checked his watch over and over again. When he picked up his daughter from school, he told her they had a small errand to run before heading home. She didn't ask questions. She trusted him. As the sun began to set, he parked in the alley behind the diner, engine off, headlights dim. His heart was racing. Every second felt like it lasted a full minute. What if she changed her mind? What if the man found her first? What if he followed them? He tightened his grip on the steering wheel. Then, just as the clock hit 8:03 p.m., he saw a shadow move behind the back door. Slowly it opened. She stepped out, her hair tied back, a backpack over her shoulder. She was shaking, but she was walking, and she didn't look back. He opened the car door, helped her in, and drove off without a word. In the rearview mirror, the streetlights faded, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she took a deep breath and let it out. She was free. The car was quiet as they drove through the city streets. Streetlights passed overhead, casting brief flashes of light across the dashboard. She sat in the back seat, hugging her backpack tightly to her chest. Her eyes were wide, like she still couldn't believe she had walked out. The man glanced at her in the rearview mirror. His daughter was quietly sitting beside him, watching the girl with a curious but kind expression. She didn't ask any questions. She just held her teddy bear close and offered a small smile. The girl noticed, for the first time that night, she gave a faint smile back. They didn't talk much during the ride. It wasn't the time for words. She looked outside, as if waiting for his car to appear, or expecting someone to start chasing them. Her fingers fidgeted with the zipper of her bag. "Are you okay back there?" the man finally asked, gently. She nodded quickly. "Yes, I think so. It just doesn't feel real yet." He nodded. "It won't, not for a while, but it is real. You did the hardest part. You walked away." She blinked quickly, holding back tears. It wasn't easy to believe she was safe. After about 20 minutes, they reached a quiet street. The shelter didn't look like much from the outside, just a simple house with warm porch lights and flower pots by the door. But inside, it was a place of safety. A place for people who had nowhere else to go. A woman stood waiting at the entrance, smiling kindly as they pulled up. "That's her," the man said. "She runs the shelter. Her name's not important unless you want to know it. But she's someone you can trust." The girl hesitated before stepping out. She looked at the man one more time. "Why are you helping me?" she asked softly. He paused for a moment before replying. "Because once, someone helped me when I was broken. Because I promised myself, if I ever saw someone like me again, I wouldn't look away." She didn't say anything else, just nodded. The shelter woman opened the door gently, as if not to scare her. "You're safe now," she said. "Come inside. There's a warm meal waiting and a quiet room just for you." The girl looked back one last time, then stepped inside. The man and his daughter sat in the car for a moment after the door closed. "Daddy," the little girl said. "Did we help her?" He looked at her through the mirror, eyes soft. "Yes, we did." She smiled proudly and hugged her teddy bear tighter. That night, he finally slept. Not deeply, but peacefully. A piece of his heart had been heavy for days, and now, even though things weren't perfect, he knew he had done the right thing. The next morning, his phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. "Thank you for everything. I don't know what comes next, but I know I'm not afraid tonight. That's because of you." He stared at the message for a while. Then he smiled, typed back just one sentence. "You were brave. All I did was believe in you." Days passed. The shelter kept in touch. They said the girl was doing better, sleeping more, eating more, slowly opening up. She hadn't made any calls to the man who had controlled her for so long. Her phone had been turned off. She was slowly starting to talk about what had happened. And most importantly, She had started to ask about what came next. She didn't want to hide forever. She wanted to work again, maybe study, maybe volunteer. She wanted to live. One afternoon, the shelter invited the man to visit. He brought his daughter with him, carrying a small bag of groceries and a box of cookies. The girl met them in the common room. She looked different. Her hair was loose, her eyes clearer. There was still pain in her face, but it was softer now. She stood taller. "Hi," she said, almost shyly. "I wasn't sure I'd ever see you again." He smiled. "You look stronger." She smiled back. "I feel a little stronger." His daughter walked over and handed her the cookies. "These are from us. I helped bake them." The girl laughed, really laughed. A sound that hadn't escaped her lips in a long time. "Thank you," she said. They sat for a while just talking. About nothing big. Just small things, how the weather had changed, how the shelter had a friendly cat that wandered in sometimes, how she was thinking of taking a short class at the community center. Nothing dramatic. But those conversations were big in their own way, because they were normal. And she hadn't had normal in a long time. When it was time to leave, she walked them to the door. Can I hug you?" she asked. He nodded. They hugged, not tight, not long, just enough to say, "I'm okay now." She crouched to hug his daughter too. "You're the kindest little girl I've ever met," she whispered. "Because my daddy taught me to care for people," the child replied proudly, and just like that, the door closed again, but this time not out of fear. This time, it was peace. Weeks passed. The season slowly shifted, and the air turned crisp. Leaves began falling from the trees, and warm coffee replaced cold drinks. Life, in its quiet way, moved forward. For the single dad, things settled into a calm routine again. School runs, work, meals with his daughter, bedtime stories. But every so often, his thoughts returned to the girl from the diner, the one who used to glance at the door like it held both fear and hope. He hadn't heard from her in a while, but that didn't worry him. In fact, it made him hopeful. Maybe no news meant peace. Maybe she was finally living without fear. He didn't need anything from her. He had done what he knew was right, and that was enough. But one day, just as he was locking up the house for the evening, his phone buzzed. "Hi. I hope it's okay that I texted. I wanted to share something." He smiled instantly. Then a second message came through, this time, a photo. It was a picture of her holding a certificate. She had enrolled in a short course in basic accounting. It was her first step toward rebuilding her life. "I passed my first class," she wrote. "I never thought I could do something like this. Thank you for helping me take that first step." He replied simply, "You had it in you all along. I just reminded you." That night, he told his daughter the good news. She cheered, clapped her hands, and asked, "Can we visit her again someday?" "We'll see," he said, smiling. "Maybe when she's ready." Meanwhile, at the shelter, her life had begun to change slowly, but meaningfully. She had joined a small group of women who met twice a week to share stories and support each other. At first, she had sat quietly, just listened. But one day, as another woman cried about feeling trapped and scared, she spoke up. "I used to think I was weak too," she said softly, "but walking out was the strongest thing I ever did. And if I can do it, maybe you can too." The room was silent for a moment. Then the woman nodded, wiping her tears, and something shifted in the girl who used to stare at the door. She had once been the one who needed saving. Now she was giving strength to someone else. That night, the shelter coordinator sat with her after group and said, "You know, not everyone finds the courage to speak, but you did. You're not just healing, you're helping others heal too." She didn't know what to say. All she could do was smile through teary eyes. A few days later, she made a bold decision. She went back to the diner, not to work, but to say goodbye. It was strange walking in again. The place smelled the same, looked the same. But she didn't feel the same. Her hands didn't shake. Her heart didn't race. She wasn't afraid anymore. Some of the staff were surprised to see her. The manager came over and asked gently, "Are you okay now?" She nodded. "I am. I just wanted to thank you for not asking too many questions when I left. I had to go, and I'm glad I did." The manager smiled warmly. "We were worried. But I'm happy you're safe." She didn't stay long. She just sat at one of the booths, ordered a coffee, and watched the door, not because she was waiting to run, but because she could look at it without fear now. She sipped her coffee slowly, letting the quiet victory settle in her chest. It wasn't the same diner anymore, or maybe it was, but she wasn't the same girl anymore. One evening, she received a letter at the shelter. It was handwritten, tucked into a simple envelope. She opened it carefully. Inside was a drawing done in crayon of 3 stick figures: a man, a little girl, and someone who looked like her. There was a big sun in the sky, and hearts floating around the picture. On the bottom, in crooked but sweet handwriting, were the words, "You're strong now. I hope you smile every day, from your friend." She laughed softly, placing a hand over her mouth. It was from the little girl. Tears rolled down her cheeks, not from pain this time, but from something else. Gratitude, healing, sense of being seen and remembered. She carefully placed the drawing in a small journal. She had started keeping a collection of thoughts, memories, and plans for the future. She wrote below the picture, "This was the moment I knew I wasn't broken anymore." Life didn't suddenly become perfect. She still had hard days. Nights when memories crept in, when old fears tried to whisper again. But now, she had tools. She had support. She had new dreams. She was applying for part-time jobs, ones that didn't involve hiding bruises or checking over her shoulder. She was thinking of getting her own small apartment someday, maybe even rescuing a cat from the shelter once she was settled. And more than anything, she was learning to trust herself again. The girl who used to stare at the door, waiting to escape, was now walking through open doors on her own. It had been 3 months since she walked out of the diner's back door and into a new life. The seasons had changed. The wind was colder now. Trees stood bare along the streets, but somehow the world didn't feel so harsh anymore. She had made it this far one day at a time. And now she stood at a quiet park bench, waiting for someone. A small girl came running toward her first, with tiny shoes tapping quickly on the sidewalk. She was smiling and holding a drawing in her hand. Behind her came the man, calm, gentle. Familiar. She hadn't seen them in a while, not since she moved into her own small apartment with help from the shelter. But she had asked to meet again. This time, to say thank you, not with fear or tears, but with steady hands and clear eyes. "You've gotten taller," she said to the little girl, laughing. "I'm still the same." The child giggled, handing her the new drawing. It was of her again, with long hair and the bright sun above her head. The words said, "You are brave and kind." The girl's voice was soft. "My dad said you're doing big things now." She smiled and looked at him. "I'm trying," she said. "I finally got a job at a local office, small place, but quiet. And I'm finishing the second part of my course. It's not much, but it's mine." He nodded proudly. "That's everything. You've built something real. And you did it yourself." She looked at him for a moment, then said, "You gave me the start. That night, you believed me without asking me to prove anything. You didn't ask questions or judge me. You just showed up." He shook his head. "I didn't save you. You were already trying to save yourself. I just opened the door." She paused. Her eyes filled slightly, but the tears didn't fall. This time, she didn't cry from sadness. This time, it was something different, something full of strength. "I've met others like me," she continued. "At the support group. I've started helping out, speaking to girls who are too afraid to tell their stories. I tell them what you told me, that walking away doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're strong enough to start over." He nodded. not saying anything. Some stories didn't need long conversations. Some healing was done just by listening. The little girl ran off to chase a butterfly nearby. And for a moment, the two adults stood in silence. Then the woman reached into her bag and pulled out a small, wrapped box. "I got this for you," she said, holding it out. "Just something simple." He opened it slowly. Inside was a KEYCHAIN dot. It had a tiny engraved message on it that read, "You helped me find the door. I walked through it." He turned the keychain over and smiled. It was heavy for something so small. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I never thought I'd be able to stand in front of someone and say I'm okay now," she said. "But I am. Some days are harder than others. But I'm not afraid anymore. That part of my life doesn't own me." They sat on the bench for a while, watching the little girl play in the late afternoon sun. Leaves crunched under her feet as she laughed freely. "You know," she said suddenly, "when I used to stare at the door at the diner, I didn't even know what I was hoping for. I just knew I couldn't stay. And I kept wishing someone would notice." He looked at her and replied softly, "And someone did." She smiled. "Yes, and now I try to notice others too. Because people like me, people stuck in silence, sometimes all we need is for someone to look at us like we matter." He nodded. They stayed until the sun started dipping below the trees. As they got up to leave, the little girl ran back to her and gave her a quick hug. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. The woman laughed and hugged her back tightly. "That means more to me than you know." That night, as the woman sat in her apartment, she took out her journal. She opened to a fresh page and wrote, "I am no longer the girl who watched the door. I am the woman who walks through it and never looks back." She closed the journal and smiled to herself. A new chapter had begun. A chapter she wrote on her own terms. And this time, no one was standing in her way.